She didn't look like power. That was always the point. Diana Okafor stood in the boarding line at Gate 14 of Houston Intercontinental Airport, wearing a simple cream linen blazer, dark slacks, and flat shoes that had seen better days. Her carry-on was a soft black duffel, worn at one corner, the zipper slightly misaligned. She carried a sealed manila envelope tucked under her left arm, pressed close to her body like something precious. Or something dangerous. No entourage. No first-class boarding pass. No one rushing ahead to prepare her seat. Just a woman in line. The gate agent scanned her boarding pass and glanced up, the way they always did, that half-second assessment, that invisible calculation people make when they see a black woman traveling alone in economy. The agent said nothing. But her eyes said something. Diana smiled anyway. She always smiled anyway. She walked down the jet bridge, stepped onto the plane, and paused for just a moment in the doorway. Every seat. Every overhead panel. Every logo stitched into the headrests, every safety card tucked in every seat pocket, every uniform on every flight attendant walking the aisle. All of it was hers. She had built this. From nothing. From less than nothing. And today, on this specific flight, on this specific Tuesday morning, she wasn't here as the CEO of Okafor Airways. She was here as a passenger. She was here to listen. To watch. To feel what her customers felt. She had no idea that a man 3 rows back was about to make this the most important flight of his life. And his worst mistake, people who knew Diana Okafor's story said it didn't seem real. She grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in southwest Houston, the youngest of 4 children, daughter of Nigerian immigrants who worked double shifts and still came home smiling. Her father drove a delivery truck. Her mother cleaned offices downtown. On weekends, they all went to church together, and Diana sat in the front pew and listened to the pastor say the same thing every Sunday. You are not behind. You are just early. She carried those words like a compass. By the time she was 19, Diana was working 3 jobs, cashier at a grocery store, overnight stock clerk, and weekend receptionist at a small regional airline called Skybridge Air. That last job was supposed to be temporary. She needed the income. She never imagined it would become an obsession. But something happened when she put on that headset and started answering calls. She started listening, really listening, to what people complained about. Delays with no explanation. Rude agents. Fees that appeared from nowhere. Passengers treated like livestock and charged like royalty. She started writing things down in a small green notebook. Problems. Patterns. Ideas. Her supervisor found the notebook once. He laughed. You're a receptionist, he said. Not a consultant. She nodded, took the notebook back, and kept writing. 7 years later, she had a business degree from the University of Houston, earned at night, while working days, and a business plan that had been rejected by 11 banks. The 12th said yes. The loan was small. The vision was enormous. She launched Okafor Airways at age 31. 3 planes. 8 routes. A staff of 42 people who believed in her because she believed in them first. By the time she turned 42, Okafor Airways was flying 200 routes across North America and the Caribbean. Her company was valued at over $2 billion. She had been on the cover of Forbes. She had spoken at the White House. She had been offered acquisition deals by 3 major carriers, and she had turned all 3 down with the same polite, firm response. This airline was built for the people who can't afford to be treated badly. I'm not selling that. But success had a shadow side. The board of directors, 8 men and 1 other woman, most of them brought in during the growth years, had been pushing back hard for the last 18 months. Costs were up. Competitors were circling. And there was a faction on the board, led by a man named Gerald Pierce, who believed the company needed to be restructured. That Diana's vision was too soft for the market. That sentiment didn't scale. Gerald Pierce had been recruiting. Quietly. Methodically. And one of the people he had been talking to was a CEO named Marcus Hale. Marcus Hale boarded the plane like he was doing it a favor. He was 48 years old, broad-shouldered, with silver at his temples and the kind of tan that only came from vacations on boats. He wore a slim-cut charcoal blazer over a white shirt, no tie, and carried a leather briefcase that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He was the CEO of Hale Group Industries, a mid-sized logistics and transportation conglomerate with fingers in cargo, charter, and freight contracts. He was also, quietly, in conversations with Gerald Pierce about a potential seat on the Okafor Airways board. Marcus didn't fly commercial often. He had a fractional jet share. But today, his assistant had booked him on this flight last minute. His Gulfstream was in for maintenance, the charter options were overpriced even by his standards, and he needed to be in Miami by noon. He looked at his boarding pass. Seat 14B. Middle seat. He stopped at the row, stared at it for a moment, then looked at the flight attendant nearest to him, a young woman named Camille, who wore her Okafor Airways wings with visible pride. "Is there any chance of an upgrade?" he asked. "Business or first?" Camille checked her tablet. "I'm sorry, sir. This flight doesn't have a business or first-class cabin. All economy." Marcus looked at her like she had said something offensive. "You're serious?" "Yes, sir. Can I help you find your seat?" He made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a scoff. He shoved his briefcase into the overhead bin, loudly, and dropped into 14B with the energy of a man registering a formal complaint through his body language alone. The woman in 14A, the window seat, didn't look up. Diana was reading. A slim paperback. She'd had it for weeks but only managed 30 pages. Today, she told herself, she would get to 100. Marcus settled in, clicked his seatbelt with unnecessary force, and pulled out his phone. He had 17 emails, 3 missed calls, and a text from Gerald Pierce that said simply, "On track. Meeting Thursday. Don't be late." He typed back, "Never am." He glanced sideways at the woman beside him. Took her in for half a second. Linen blazer. Old duffel. Paperback novel. Sealed envelope on her tray table. He looked away and put his earbuds in. Diana turned a page. The plane pushed back from the gate. And for 40 minutes, the world was quiet. It started small. The way these things always do. Diana had shifted slightly in her seat, crossing one leg over the other, and her elbow had drifted 2 inches past the armrest boundary. Barely. The kind of micro-invasion of space that happens between any 2 adults in economy class, something every frequent flyer just absorbs as the cost of the ticket. Marcus pulled out one earbud. "Do you mind?" he said. Diana looked up from her book. "I'm sorry." "Your elbow." He pointed. "You're in my space." She looked at the armrest. She looked at her elbow. She adjusted it, moving it an inch back. "Of course. Sorry about that." She went back to her book. Marcus put his earbud back in. 5 minutes later, the flight attendant came by with the beverage cart. Diana asked for a sparkling water. The attendant smiled, poured it, handed it over. They exchanged a brief warm look. The attendant's name tag said Keisha, and her eyes had a particular softness when she looked at Diana, not recognition exactly, but something instinctive, the way some people sense gravity without seeing it. Marcus flagged Keisha down before she could move the cart. "Do you have anything stronger than that?" he asked, nodding toward Diana's water like it was somehow insufficient. "We have juice, coffee, or soft drinks on this flight, sir. No alcohol on morning domestic routes." Marcus leaned back with a theatrical exhale. "Of course not." He looked around the cabin with open disdain. What kind of airline doesn't serve alcohol in the morning? Keisha's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Okafor Airways policy, sir. Is there anything I can get you? Fine. Coffee. Black. She poured it and moved on. Marcus picked up the cup, looked at the Okafor Airways logo printed on the sleeve, and muttered something under his breath. Diana heard it. She said nothing. She turned another page. But the page she was on wasn't registering anymore. Her eyes were moving. Her brain was elsewhere. She knew men like Marcus Hale. She had sat across boardroom tables from them for 15 years. She knew how they started, small jabs, testing the water, waiting to see if anyone pushed back. If no one did, they pushed harder. She turned another page and waited. She didn't have to wait long. That IT happened 40 minutes before landing. A child 2 rows ahead had started crying, not the polite whimper of a tired toddler, but the full volume, inconsolable wail of a 3-year-old who had simply run out of patience with the concept of air travel. The mother was doing everything right, shushing, rocking, offering snacks, playing videos on her phone, but the cabin had taken on a thin layer of collective tension. Marcus Hale did not handle collective tension quietly. He sighed. Loudly. He shifted in his seat. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at his watch. He pulled out his earbuds and looked around as if hoping someone would make eye contact so he could share his displeasure. Diana kept reading. He glanced at her. Incredible, he said, though not quite to her. The way people say things to the room when they actually mean them at one person. Diana didn't respond. I don't know how anyone chooses to fly this airline, Marcus said, louder now. No premium service, no alcohol, no proper layout, and now this. Diana turned a page. Are you seriously reading right now? Marcus said, fully addressing her this time. There was a new edge in his voice. The kind that comes when someone is bothered less by the noise and more by being ignored. Diana looked up slowly. Her face was perfectly calm. Yes. You don't find this environment a little, he paused, looking her over once more, difficult? I find it fine. He studied her for a moment. Then something shifted in him. Some calculation. The particular kind of cruelty that masquerades as confidence. You know, he said, leaning slightly toward her, I'm going to ask the attendant to move me. This section of the plane is not really, he looked at her seat, her duffel, her envelope, conducive to what I need. That's your choice, Diana said. Of course it is. He smiled. I just want to make sure you understand. Some of us have more important things to do on a flight than read a novel. Some of us are actually working. The man in 14C, a heavy-set man in a polo shirt who had been pretending to sleep, opened one eye. Diana set her book down. She looked at Marcus with an expression that was not anger and not hurt. It was something steadier than both. I understand, she said quietly. Marcus wasn't done. Actually, he said, his voice rising just enough for the rows around him to hear, do you mind switching to the aisle? I'd prefer the window. You can take my seat. The air in the cabin changed. The man in 14C fully opened his eyes. The woman across the aisle looked up from her magazine. 2 rows back, a young man with a phone angled it slightly. I'm comfortable where I am, Diana said. I'm sure you are. Marcus glanced around, as if confirming his audience. But people like me, people who actually need to work on these flights, we're the ones keeping airlines like this in business. You'd think they'd plan for that. People like me. The sentence landed in the cabin like a stone dropped into still water. Rings spread outward. Silences deepened. Keisha appeared at the end of the row. Her face was composed but her hands were very still. She had heard. She looked at Diana. Diana gave the smallest, barely perceptible shake of her head. Not yet. Marcus flagged Keisha down anyway. "I'd like to request a seat change. Something away from," he gestured vaguely, "here." Keisha looked at her tablet. "I'm sorry, sir. The flight is completely full." Marcus stared at her. "You're telling me there isn't a single open seat on this plane?" "That's correct." He sat back, jaw tight. He looked at Diana one more time. "Must be nice," he said. "Flying on someone else's dime with no particular place to be." Diana picked up her book. She turned a page. Her heartbeat was perfectly steady. And in the row behind them, unnoticed and silent, a young man named Terrell Washington had been recording for the last 4 minutes. The plane touched down in Miami at 11:47 a.m. Marcus Hale was on his feet before the seatbelt sign dinged off, pulling his briefcase from the overhead, moving toward the front of the plane with the practiced urgency of someone who considered every second of waiting a personal insult. Diana stayed in her seat. She waited until most of the cabin had emptied. She tucked her book into her duffel. She picked up the sealed envelope from the tray table and held it in both hands for a moment, looking at the name written on it. For the attention of the Okafor Airways Board of Directors. She had written that name herself, 3 days ago, after a meeting that had lasted 6 hours and ended with nothing resolved. Gerald Pierce had smiled across the table at her with the smile of a man who thought time was on his side. She stood up. Keisha was waiting at the front of the plane, clipboard in hand, looking at Diana with eyes that held 100 unasked questions. "Ms. Okafor," Keisha said quietly as she passed, the name barely above a whisper. "Are you all right?" "I'm excellent," Diana said. She squeezed Keisha's arm once. "You handled that perfectly. Write it up in your incident log, everything. Time, words, witnesses. I'll need it." Keisha blinked. Were you? "I'll explain soon." Diana smiled. "You have a beautiful crew, Keisha. I mean that." She walked off the jet bridge and into the terminal, the envelope tucked under her arm. Behind her, in the seat pocket of 14A, she had left something. A business card. Plain white. Simple font. Diana Okafor. Founder and CEO, Okafor Airways. And on the back, in her own handwriting, "Thank you for flying with US.by 2 p.m., the video was on Twitter." Terrell Washington was 24 years old, a graphic designer from Atlanta traveling to Miami for a client meeting, and he had filmed the exchange between Marcus Hale and Diana from the moment Marcus said, "People like me." He had posted it without fully knowing who Diana was. He had just watched a woman be publicly humiliated on a flight and had done the one thing he could think of. He captioned it, "This man on my flight today decided to bully the woman next to him because she was reading and not working. The attendant handled it better than I would have." Within 3 hours, the video had 4 million views. Within 5 hours, someone had identified Marcus Hale from his LinkedIn profile. Someone else had found a comment Diana had once made in an interview, "I fly economy on my own airline twice a month. I want to know what my passengers experience." Within 6 hours, someone had put it together. The replies became an avalanche. "She OWNS the airline. He just disrespected the woman who signs everyone's paycheck. I need the ending to this story so badly." But the story wasn't over. Not even close. What no one on Twitter knew yet, what Marcus Hale himself did not yet know, was that the sealed envelope Diana had been carrying wasn't just any document. It was a decision she had been carrying for 3 weeks. And it had nothing to do with Marcus Hale. Until now, Thursday morning. Miami. The Okafor Airways boardroom occupied the top floor of a glass tower in Brickell, overlooking Biscayne Bay. The table was long and dark and expensive. The chairs were full. Gerald Pierce sat at the far end, silver-haired and composed, flanked by 2 allies who had been quietly voting against Diana's proposals for the past year. He had arrived early, which meant he had something planned. Diana arrived exactly on time. She wore a deep burgundy blazer. Her natural hair was out, full and unapologetic. She carried a leather portfolio and, notably, no manila envelope. That envelope had already been delivered. She had sent it by courier Wednesday night, addressed to each board member individually, with a cover letter that said only, "Please read before Thursday's session." Gerald Pierce looked composed. But his right hand was flat on the table, pressing down slightly, the way a person holds something still when they're trying not to let it move. He had read the envelope. Diana sat down. "Before we begin the formal agenda," she said, "I'd like to address the document I sent last night." Gerald Pierce leaned forward. "Diana, I think we should table that until—" "Gerald." She said his name quietly, but the table went still. "I've been patient for 18 months. I'd like 60 seconds. A silence. She took it. "The document I sent you contains a full audit of the restructuring proposal you've been privately circulating, the one that was never brought to the full board, the one that recommends selling 40% of our Caribbean routes to a competitor, and the one that proposes adding an external CEO above my position." She paused. "It also contains communications between you and a Mr. Marcus Hale, recorded, time-stamped, and legally obtained, discussing a potential arrangement that would financially benefit both of you at this company's expense." The room did not breathe. "I've had this information for 3 weeks," Diana continued. "I was planning to bring it to a special session next month. But something happened on Tuesday that reminded me, very clearly, that patience has a limit." Gerald's composure cracked, just at the edges. "You can't seriously be suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Diana said. "The documents do the suggesting. I'm simply presenting them." She opened her portfolio and slid clean copies to each board member. For the next 40 minutes, nobody left the room. Marcus Hale woke up Thursday at 7:15 a.m. in a hotel room in Brickell. He showered. He ordered room service. He checked his phone. The video had 22 million views. He stared at it for a long time. He watched himself say, "People like me." He watched himself gesture dismissively at the woman beside him. He watched her face, still, composed, saying nothing, and for the first time in a long time, Marcus Hale felt something uncomfortable move through his chest. He put the phone down. He told himself it would pass. He told himself it was Twitter, the outrage factory, everything was forgotten in 48 hours. He opened his laptop. There were 47 emails. 3 were from journalists. 12 were from business associates. 1 was from his PR firm, subject line, "Urgent call this morning." And 1, near the top of the list, was from Gerald Pierce. It had been sent at 6:04 a.m. The subject line was, "We need to talk. Everything has changed." Marcus felt the floor shift slightly underneath him. He called Gerald's number. It went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He opened the email. "Marcus, the board meeting has gone sideways. She had documentation. All of it. Call me immediately." Marcus sat on the edge of the hotel bed in his bathrobe. The room service was getting cold. Outside the window, Miami was bright and beautiful and completely indifferent to his situation. He called Gerald one more time. This time, it didn't even ring. Diana had not planned a press conference. She had planned to leave the board meeting quietly and let the legal process run its course. But by 10 a.m., there were 17 journalists outside the Okafor Airways building. They had not come because of the board meeting. They didn't know about that yet. They had come because of the video. Diana stood in the lobby with her communications director, Priya Sharma, who was managing approximately 9 conversations simultaneously and somehow still speaking in full sentences. "You don't have to do this today," Priya said. "We can issue a statement. Short, measured. I know I don't have to, Diana said. She looked through the glass doors at the crowd of cameras and microphones. But I want to. She walked outside. The questions came fast and loud. She let the noise settle for a moment, just standing there, letting the cameras find her. She was calm. She was unhurried. I'd like to make a brief statement, she said. And then I'll answer a few questions. Silence fell. On Tuesday, I flew economy on Okafor Airways Flight 447 from Houston to Miami. I do this regularly, because I believe the best way to run an airline is to understand what it feels like to fly on one. During that flight, I was spoken to in a way that was condescending, dismissive, and designed to diminish me. She paused. It wasn't the first time I've experienced something like that in my life. It won't be the last. What was different about Tuesday is that I was on my own plane, surrounded by my own crew, being humiliated in front of passengers I have spent 11 years trying to protect from exactly that kind of treatment. She let that land. I didn't say much on the flight. I didn't need to. I said everything I needed to say this morning in a boardroom on the 14th floor of this building. She looked directly into the nearest camera. Okafor Airways was built for the people who are told they don't belong in certain spaces. For the people who are looked past, talked over, and moved out of the way. It was built for the woman working 3 jobs who saved for 6 months to fly her daughter to see her grandmother. It was built for the man in the middle seat who just wants to be treated like a human being. That will never change. Not under my leadership. Not under any leadership that comes after me. She paused once more. That's all I have to say about Tuesday. A slight smile. Questions. 3 rows back in the crowd, a journalist raised her hand. Ms. Okafor, can you confirm reports that the man in the video, Marcus Hale, was in discussions to join your board of directors? Diana held the journalist's gaze. I can confirm that conversation is no longer taking place, she said. By Friday evening, Marcus Hale had resigned from 3 industry committees, issued a public apology that satisfied no one, and watched the Hale Group industry stock price drop 6% on news that 2 of its largest logistics contracts, both with companies whose leadership had seen the video, were under review. His PR firm's statement described his behavior as a momentary lapse in judgment that does not reflect his values. The internet found it unconvincing. It collected 80,000 quote tweets, most of them offering alternative descriptions. Gerald Pierce resigned from the Okafor Airways board quietly, through his lawyer, citing personal reasons. 2 other board members followed within the week, once the full details of the audit became semi-public through a leak that nobody claimed credit for and nobody investigated very hard. Keisha Williams, the flight attendant on Flight 447, was invited to participate in a new Okafor Airways initiative, a frontline employee advisory council that would have direct input on passenger experience policies. She was the first member named. When she was told, she cried for about 30 seconds, then immediately pulled out her incident log and started talking about everything she'd noticed in 12 years of service. Terrell Washington, who had posted the video, was contacted by Okafor Airways' PR team. Diana had personally asked them to reach out. They offered him nothing, no money, no promotion, no deal. Just a handwritten note from Diana that said, "Thank you for speaking up when others looked away." That took courage. He framed it. And Diana Okafor? She went back to work. She had an airline to run.